While our candidates are finding their seats and greeting each other, I want to welcome you here tonight to the West Niagara All Candidates Night. I want to welcome the candidates. This is kind of exciting. We set out 120 chairs, hoping we might fill them. We put out an extra tray at the back. We used all of those. We had to pull out a second tray. So thank you very much for being civically minded, for being here tonight, for caring about the issues and what is happening in our province. My name is Don Rose, and I'm the Chief Administrative Officer here at Great Lakes Christian High School. I want to welcome you on behalf of the high school. I'm also on the Board of Directors for the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, and specifically, I am on the Government Relations and Advocacy Committee. And I want to thank you for attending on behalf of the 3 West Niagara Chambers of Commerce. That's the West Lincoln, the Grimsby, and the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, who are hosting the All Candidates Evening tonight. I think you know, if you know anything about the Chambers of Commerce, that one of their greatest values is to create avenues that enable local businesses to interact, to communicate with, and to hear from all levels of government. And events like this are possible because that's one of the values that we hold, and it is obvious in our community it's one that you hold as well. We want to give a very special thank you tonight to our event sponsor, the Realtors Association of Hamilton-Burlington, whose territory includes Niagara West, and to our water sponsor, H2Go Mobile Wash. I'm going to turn our time over to and welcome our moderator, Paul McPherson, one of our 2 Ward 3 councillors here in the town of Lincoln. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, and as Don mentioned, this is an absolutely fantastic turnout tonight, and for those that are watching on YouTube, we welcome you as well, and for those that are not aware, we are live streaming, and we are. You can find that on the lincolnchamber.ca website. So, as Don mentioned, I am Paul McPherson. Also, in addition to being tonight's moderator, I am a counselor here in the town of Lincoln, and I will be your moderator for this evening's All Candidates debate. I would like to introduce the candidates. The candidates have been seated alphabetically by last name from left to right. So I'll start with Chris Arneux from the New Blue, Ontario. Dave Augustine from the New Democratic Party of Ontario. Dan Dale from Ontario Party. Doug Joyner from Liberal Party of Ontario. Sam Usterhoff from the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario. And Jim Torma from the Populist Party of Ontario. And I will also mention that there are 2 other candidates that will be on the ballot. Laura Garner from the Green Party of Ontario was not able to attend tonight. And Stefanos Karatopoulos from the Libertarian Party of Ontario did not respond to our event invitation. And I would also comment that there are some seasoned politicians that are running this year, but I also want to acknowledge the brand new politicians for stepping up and running to make our communities better and to wish them the best of luck. So the ground rules for tonight, candidates are requested to be respectful and courteous to other candidates. This forum is being provided by the West Niagara Chambers of Commerce for the benefit of our community, and we appreciate your willingness to participate. Audience members are similarly asked to be respectful of our candidates. Please keep any applause to a minimum as we have a tight agenda tonight and we want to hear as much as possible from all the candidates. At the conclusion of the debate, we have asked all of the candidates to be available at the back of the gymnasium or along the side for any questions you may have. Answers will be timed, and when you have 15 seconds remaining, you will get a warning. Do you want to lift the warning? That is our warning for 15 seconds. When your time has expired, I will step in, interrupt, and we will move to the next speaker. Your cooperation is appreciated in advance. Starting alphabetically by last name from left to right, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give his tonight opening remarks. As indicated, you will be given a 15-second warning, and at 2 minutes, that's it. I will call time, and you will be asked to stop. And just so that we're trying to balance, at the closing remarks, we'll start at this end and move to the opposite end. So we will start with the questions from the Chamber of Commerce members. So each question will be read aloud. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. Answers will be timed, and when you are at 15 seconds remaining, you'll get the warning. When your time has expired, I will interrupt and we will move to the next speaker. Again, your cooperation is appreciated. The question number 1 was submitted by a member of the Grimsby and District Chamber of Commerce.
Opening? Candidates are doing their opening.
Point of order.
Sorry about that.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order. Okay, we will start with Chris Arneux with the opening remarks. Sorry about that, folks. Chris, take it away.
Confused already. Thank you very much, and good evening, and thank you to the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce and everyone here tonight for coming out. I'm the father of 4, a grandfather of 1 with another on the way. I retired as the CFO of a large public organization 4 years ahead of time because I, like many of you here tonight, sense something is seriously wrong with the hard left turn our provincial and federal government are taking, soaring house prices, out of control provincial debt, rampant inflation. We need change. We need change to get this province and this country back on track for our children and their children. You'll get zero change with any of the 3 legacy parties, each of whom make promises with less commitment than most of us apply to our New Year's Eve fitness and nutrition goals. If you want change, you need to vote for change. The Doug Ford Conservatives have become a party of the left, moving far away from traditional conservative and Christian values, with a shameless alliance with Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh's Socialist Coalition. The provincial NDP has pushed a very progressive liberal ideology, moving 2 provincial bills, 17, the gender-affirming health care, and 67, racial equity in education, with conservative support, through 2 readings and into Standing Committee on Social Justice. The Liberals continue their practice of virtue signaling, proposing new gun laws, making legal gun ownership even harder, and advocating the continuance of the pandemic and mask and vaccine mandates. New Blue stands against all of these things. As for my right of center colleagues here tonight, I won't spend any time breaking down their platforms or maligning my fellow right of center candidates or their supporters, because I believe we all support a similar ideology. Instead, I will share what New Blue brings to the right of center option. New Blue has a candidate in all 124 ridings. Our sitting MPP has a voting record that has steadfastly supported conservative and Christian values. Our leader is on record as allowing his MPPs to represent their constituents and vote accordingly all the time, no strings attached. No other party can claim all of these things. And on a personal note, as a chartered professional accountant and certified internal auditor with many years of senior level experience in private and public sectors, I have some skill sets to credibly and effectively represent the constituents of Niagara West. I very much want to represent you, and I want to bring change to Ontario, and I'd love to have your vote on June 2nd. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dave Augustine.
Mr. Moderator, members of the Chamber of Commerce, fellow candidates, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to fix here in Niagara. Many of us are finding it harder to pay our bills, even if we have a good job or a pension. Many are seeing their dream of owning a home or running a small business slip through their fingers. We worry about our kids' chance of good schooling because they just don't have the supports that they need to thrive. Many of us in Niagara are watching a loved one hurting because there's a surgery backlog of months and months. The last 2 years have been a long, painful battle, one we're still in the final rounds of fighting. Yet these problems didn't start before COVID. They stretch back years and years. As we finally leave the pandemic, we can't go back to these problems. We need to make life more affordable, like with things like regulating gas prices and lowering the cost of auto insurance. We need to take the profit out of long-term care and invest in healthcare, like in nurses, in personal support workers, and in our hospitals. We need to reinvest in our kids' public education. We need to fight climate change and stop paving over farmland. We need to finally build the GO station at Casablanca and make the train stop in Grimsby. We need a government that puts everyday people first. As your MPP, I will fight for you, I will listen to you, I will work for you, and I will always put you and your family first. Thank you.
Dan Dale.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending. Thank you to the candidates here. This is my first time running, first time at politics, so I realize how much is involved and how intensive the work is. Paul, thank you as well for moderating for us this evening. I am Dan Dale. I am a believer in Jesus Christ, first of all. He stands first in my campaign, and there are plenty of prayers happening for our campaign. We're very proud of our team. I have my daughter's little card here. It says, God will speak the words that you need. So God is speaking to us right now. Some background, I am a classroom teacher for many years overseas. My wife was a missionary doctor. I taught in the classroom. So I understand teachers. I understand the challenges that they have. I understand a lot of the things that are happening in our educational system. I bring real-world experience to the table. Real-world experience in the classroom. I was also a construction manager for many years. I bring real-world knowledge to what I figure is a government that's disconnected from reality. I think career politicians have become too used to life as a career politician, and I'm here to present change. A little story about what got me involved. About 3 months ago, my son was on his bed, and he broke down in tears crying, and he said, Dad, there's no hope anymore. It's COVID at school. They've ripped the playgrounds out of the schoolyard. I'm segregated from my friends and other classrooms. And he just cried hopelessly. And I said, Jonathan, you have hope because your dad is going to go to fight for you. And quite frankly, I'm here to fight for you guys who have been pushed too far by a Doug Ford government that hasn't listened. And you know what? We're coming back and we're going to say, we can do this differently. We're going to do it better. I bring real world knowledge. I feel it's connecting with people that just feel isolated, disconnected from a government that has abandoned them and left them without too many options. So thank you. I appreciate your time this evening.
Doug Joyner.
Well, good evening, Niagara West residents, and thank you, West Niagara Chamber of Commerce, for hosting tonight's debate. And Paul, thank you very much for being the moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, this election is about choices and what type of future we are going to leave for our children, for the next generation. The choice is clear. A liberal government will put people and families first at the heart of every decision. By contrast, the Ontario PC government has been an absolute disaster. by grossly mismanaging COVID-19 protocols, by abandoning our residents in long-term care facilities, with the result being that the burden of this pandemic has been borne by parents, by small businesses, children, the elderly, and the frontline healthcare workers. The Doug Ford, Sam Usterhoff incompetence is simply not fair, and I hear that every single day at the doors. Today, I made a pledge to all Niagara West residents to make life more affordable for all Ontario families. To form a place to grow, a Liberal government will reduce the cost of everyday essentials, and lastly, will commit to better pay for our healthcare workers and minimum wage earners. This Ontario Liberal government has its priorities straight and will begin by acting on the following strategy as soon as we take office. First, we will repeal Bill 124. This bill is driving our healthcare professionals out of the healthcare system and at an alarming pace. Instead, the Liberal government will hire 100,000 healthcare professionals. Second, the Ontario Liberal government will invest $3 billion in mental health and addiction services and hire 3,000 mental health professionals. And for our seniors, we'll provide them with relief by increasing the old age security top-up by $1,000 per year for those who need it. It's your choice, Niagara West. On June 2nd, vote Liberal, elect Doug Joyner. I have the life experience, I have the entrepreneurial experience, and I have the political experience to lead Niagara West and take your voice to Queen's Park. Thank you.
Just before we move to Sam, I do have an announcement that the in-house questions, if you want to submit, are going to close in 5 minutes, okay? So if you have a question, I say back to Lindsay. Is it back to you, Lindsay? Okay, she's waving. 5 minutes, okay. Sam Usterhoff.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm very thankful to be here today. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules and coming here and participating in this democratic process. It's such an important part of being in our province that we're able to hear candidates bring forward different ideas to speak as to why you should select one of us to represent you at Queen's Park. And it's a great responsibility to be able to advocate for you and your concerns for you and your families at Queen's Park. I also want to thank the Chambers of Commerce for organizing today and making sure that we had this opportunity, and my fellow candidates, regardless of our political differences, our important differences as both candidates and of course in the parties that we represent. It does take a lot for them to come here and advocate for their concerns that they care about, and I want to thank you for doing that. Ontarians are sick of talk. They're sick of more reports, they're sick of more reviews, yet another committee being struck and governments talking and talking without getting the job done. But the Ontario PCs and Doug Ford are the only party that has a plan to rebuild our economy, to ensure that Ontario is kept open, to ensure that costs are being cut for you and your family by cutting the gas tax, getting rid of license plate stickers, building more homes, building more roads, and reducing congestion. We have a plan to build key infrastructure, such as the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, where we got shovels in the ground just 2 weeks ago for a priority that has been crucial for this area over the last years that was canceled by the previous Liberal government. We have a plan to get the job done for hardworking families and workers in this province, to support our seniors and ensure that we're building the crucial infrastructure moving forward to make Ontario the best place to live, work, and play. We know that that is possible. On June 2nd, I need your support to go back to Queen's Park, to fight for you and make sure that we can get the job done. Thank you.
Jim Torma.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thanks so much for everybody coming out. I think it's fantastic that people are getting engaged in civics. I think it's very crucial. I love to see the young kids here as well. I think that's very, very important. So the Populist Party Ontario is a newly formed party. It is a party that's born out of our disgust with politics, disgust with what has been going on in government. Our governments are bloated. They're spending. Then we got promise after promise after promise. And every time these elections come up, we have promises around affordable housing. Nothing ever gets done. Nothing has ever been done when it comes to affordable housing. The Populist Party Ontario has 4 pillars, 4 tenets. Personal freedom, which is guaranteed in our Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and our Bill of Rights. Personal responsibility, which means we take responsibility for ourselves and not looking to the government for a handout. That is what we're all about. It's not about taking handouts. It's about being personally responsible and being able to support yourself. That's what we advocate for. That's what we're going to empower people to be able to do. And it all starts, and again, respect and fairness are also part of our tenets. So those 4 tenets are the pillars of our existence. And in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, these are God-given rights. I want to be really clear that everybody understand what the Charter of Rights and Freedoms are. God-given rights. Our God-given rights were trampled upon by these governments. Everything that took place, instead of protecting the vulnerable, they locked down the healthy. And they forced businesses to close, small businesses to close. Meanwhile, big box stores were wide open, and people were lined up like cattle or sheep going into their pasture. This is what we want to stop. We want to bring back the right for an individual to choose what they want to do with their body. Because right now, you can have an abortion, and nobody's saying anything about it. You can euthanize yourself, and it's A-okay. But you get fired from your job as a nurse if you don't get jabbed. That is a travesty. That is an absolute travesty. Why don't we have nurses? Many of them were fired, or they quit and they left because they did not want to have something forced upon themselves. People were coerced. People were coerced through this pandemic and should never have been coerced. I got fired from my job working in agriculture, and I, along with the person that fired me, knew exactly what was going on. I have a spray license. I know what masks work and what masks don't work.
Jim, so we've reached the end of the 2 minutes. Thank you. So we will now move to the questions from the chambers. Each question will be read aloud. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the questions, and I think you know all the ground rules after that, so I don't need to go through those again. So we will start over with Chris Arneux. So the question that was submitted by a member of the Grimsby and District Chamber of Commerce is, housing prices continue to rise. The average sale price for houses sold in April has now reached $1 million here in West Niagara, putting home ownership out of reach for many families, singles, seniors wanting to purchase a home. What will your party do to address the housing crisis in our community? This encompasses both supply issues as well as affordability. Chris?
Thanks, and that's a fair question, one which I'm very well acquainted with, having had one of my daughters and granddaughters move home, a registered nurse who lost her job and unable to afford a home of her own. Rampant inflation, the price of fuel, combined with an absolutely out-of-control housing market is hurting not only young first-time home buyers, but everybody right across the board. In order to get on top of it, first things first, you need the economy to be functioning. You can't shut down the economy and expect anything to happen with respect to house prices or inflation. You have to keep it going. This government has not. This government has shut down the economy for greater duration and more frequently than any other jurisdiction in the Western world. So that would have to stop. New Blue would prefer a more targeted response to a medical emergency. In terms of helping Ontarians, we would get rid of the carbon tax, reduce
Chris,
the HST by 3%.
I'm going to interrupt.
Thank you very much.
And I would just suggest to the other candidates that a minute is not long. So obviously, get your comments out early, and then make sure that they are made. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks very much for the question. This is absolutely something that we hear as I'm knocking at the doors, something that folks are really concerned about. They're concerned about themselves, they're concerned about their children. How are they going to afford a home? one of the things that the NDP will do is bring back something that was done a number of years ago, and that is a 10% joint equity loan that you can use for your down payment, and you don't have to repay it until you sell that starter home that you have. Another thing that we will do is to take a look at the bidding process. The bidding process has really ramped up and encouraged all of those higher prices. That's something that definitely needs to be looked at. The other is there are many speculators. I was talking to a builder here, large builder in Niagara, and they were saying, oh yeah, people were coming in from away, from Toronto, Burlington area, buying houses, 3 of them at a time, not even know where they are. And that drives up the price of housing as well. And so we want to put in some rules to stop speculation. Those are some of the things that we'll do as an NDP government. Thank you.
Dan?
Excellent. As a project manager in construction, I dealt with this daily. I was in the subdivisions, I talked to the builders, I talked to the guys working at the building, and the story was all the same. Shortages on supplies, shortages on labor. You can't build if you don't have it, you can't build if you don't have the people. My colleague was absolutely correct. When you shut down the economy for 2 years, there are consequences. So that's number one. We need to address those issues. The Ontario Party plans on allowing fourplex and duplex building, so some zoning adjustments to ensure that people that have fourplexes and duplexes can build those. We also want to address foreign purchases. We feel that is driving the price up incredibly, so we want to put a stop to a lot of the foreign purchasing that's happening right now.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Doug?
Well, thank you for the question, Paul. Ontario Liberals have a plan to make buying and renting affordable by building urgently needed homes, putting land speculators on notice, and closing the rent control loopholes created by the Doug Ford government. The Ontario Liberal government will also double the pace of home building this year, keeping that pace until we have built 1.5 million homes. When elected, a Liberal government will work quickly together with our municipal partners to end exclusionary zoning policies and allow homes with up to 3 units and 2 stories to be built in residential areas across our province, with this permission also extending to secondary and laneway suites. We will ban new non-resident ownership. We'll also tax empty homes and put a use it or lose it levy on speculators with service land and land that has been approved with permits. Ontario voters have a choice between the Ford Conservatives, who have introduced 4 plans.
Thank you, Doug.
But made no progress. Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you. So at its very core, we know that the housing market has become an issue of supply and demand. We have many, many new people moving into Ontario each year, about 250,000 new Ontarians, which is fantastic. We were all new Ontarians at one point. But the reality is that unless we have the housing to be able to ensure that those people have places to live, you're going to have a lot of people bidding on not a lot of houses. So when we came to office, there were approximately 40 to 50,000 homes being constructed every year in the province of Ontario. We've doubled that. Currently, there are approximately 100,000 homes being built, and we have a plan to build 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years, so increasing that rate. And in contrast with what the NDP and Liberals are saying here today, when they had the opportunity to support legislation that would reduce the time it takes to build these types of units, they said no. The average time of construction for a new subdivision is, I believe, 8 to 10 years in the province of Ontario. If we want to have affordable housing, we need to get housing built to ensure that we're addressing that supply and demand imbalance, and we're going to get that job done.
Jim?
We would ban all foreign investment, period. No brokers will be holding foreign investment portfolios for foreigners to own land in Ontario. This is very critical. I was in Toronto for 15 years. I watched the foreign investors drive prices way up. This is foreign dark money coming into this country. It's being laundered through our real estate brokerage houses and our real estate, and this is a known fact. It's an open secret that foreign investment, dirty money is coming in, and it's driving up our prices because they can afford to spend $1 million on a $500,000 home because that money's dark and they need land. They're going to buy land at whatever price it is. But for us sitting here, it's a huge problem. No foreign investment, real estate boards reevaluated as well as to whether or not they're doing the right thing for our real estate with all the bidding wars that are going on that are artificially increasing the prices of homes and lining the pockets of real estate companies.
Thank you, Jim. Our second question comes from the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. Many of our local businesses are now facing another challenge as they come out of the pandemic. A manpower shortage across West Niagara in many industry sectors has made for a much more difficult recovery. With businesses struggling to find and retain employees, how would your party attract more workers? And I'm going to start at this end with Jim.
So the first thing that I would do with respect to what's been going on is eliminate the UBI, eliminate CERB, eliminate all these handouts that are making our working people and people in general be dependent on the government for a handout. There's been a huge labor shortage here in this area because of the fact that everybody's now taking CERB and they're working on focusing on UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is supposed to be coming from where? The sky? Who's paying for it? These types of programs need to be rolled back and reevaluated 100%. We need to also make sure that we actually provide the fertile ground for workers to actually be able to be put into places and jobs through the training programs that we would be focusing on instituting. And as well, a program where we have skilled trades in high school, where when a kid comes out of school in grade 12, he's ticketed. He's a ticketed tradesperson right in high school. That's what we were advocating for.
Sam.
Yeah, this is an issue I've been hearing about from job creators across Niagara, and we have a plan to address this through training and skills development. One of the programs that we brought forward, and I'll explain a little bit how we've been able to already start working towards this, both is by a focus on the skilled trades and ensuring that we're able to break down those barriers that exist for people to get into the skilled trades. For example, we created a 1-to-1 journeyman to apprentice ratio to be able to ensure that more people were able to get apprenticeships. But another thing we've done is work with our employment help centers to get people who are on the system to be able to get off and get to work. So one of the examples of this is that on the ODSP Ontario Works program, historically there was less than 1% of people who would come off those programs each year and enter the workforce. We reformed the system and we've gotten over 36,000 people off of OW and on ODSP to get into the workforce to be able to work in good jobs. This is an important way of ensuring that we're able to supply our job creators with skilled labor, people who are able to get good jobs, who are able to work and put food on the table for them and their family. It's very important. Doug Ford and the PCs are going to get it done.
Thank you, Sam. Doug, go ahead.
You know, in a province as wealthy and healthy as ours, there's no full-time worker that should struggle to make ends meet. And we also need to find workers in all places across Ontario. We also need to find workers all across Canada and tell them about the excitement of Niagara and trying to attract them here. We're also going to work, our Liberal government is also going to work with the Ministry of Colleges and Trades in order to present different options for students coming out of high school. There's no secret here. We have a shortage. We have the lowest unemployment in Ontario history. Every single day, people are finding it hard to find workers. I don't have the magic bullet to answer that question. I know that the Conservatives talk a big game about filling all of these jobs all of the time, but at the end of the day, we have to raise minimum wage and attract people to jobs and get them off of the couch some way, somehow. A Liberal government will do that. Thank you.
Dan?
Number one, let's get people that have been fired for not taking the vaccine back to work. So the Ontario government, absolutely. I am meeting more and more people as I go door knocking, and they're saying, you know what, we want to get out of Ontario. All these blue-collar workers that want to leave, we should be trying to keep them here. How do we keep them here? Let's make Ontario enjoyable to live in. Let's let people go to a restaurant without a vaccine. Let's make sure that they want to stay here. I feel like people have lost hope in Ontario. Draconian measures have made people fed up, and quite frankly, a lot of people don't even want to get into the job market because you know what? They feel like they're going to get locked out the next time this happens. This fall it's going to come and people are going to be locked out of their jobs again. Who wants to get involved? Enough is enough. We're fighting back.
Dave.
Thanks very much for the question. What comes to mind to me are some of the folks that I talk to as I go door knocking. Many of them are women. Talk to a PSW that says that she can't make ends meet. She's doing a yeoman's job. Folks are sick, and she's covering 30 residents in a long-term care home because the other 2 are sick. And she's only being paid $18 to $20 an hour. How is that attractive for someone? We need to increase that wage, and the NDP government will do that. The same with minimum wage. There's so many kids and folks, especially women, trying to get back into the employment sector, and they're looking at that minimum wage going, I don't know if it's worth it for all of the travel I have to do and the cost of living that's been ramped up under this government. And the final is, I even talked to an education worker, a custodian, again, a woman, who said that she had to work another job and couldn't make ends meet because of the pay that she had. We have to change that, and the NDP has a plan for that. Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you. So my counterparts, Jim and Dale, have nailed a couple of things right on the head with respect to stopping the CERB, reinstating any employees who have been terminated as a result of vaccine mandates, and looking at aligning training programs more with job availability. I know in our school systems right now, we still push university education when there is a lot of opportunity for trained, qualified tradespeople out there, and we don't put enough emphasis in it. With respect to Niagara West, one of the things that we require is access to a labor force, and for the labor force to have access to work throughout the region. The really inadequate Niagara Regional Transit on-demand ride out in Niagara West doesn't help meet that need, and just earlier we talked about another issue with respect to housing prices. If you're to give people who are not making a significant income access to work and housing, they need to be able to get from the place where there is affordable housing to where they need to work.
Thank you,
right
Chris.
now that's not available. Thanks.
Thank you. Our third and final question in this section is from the West Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. Our healthcare system has been severely hurt throughout the pandemic and continues to see staffing shortages and unacceptable emergency and surgery wait times. What will your party do to address our healthcare system and ensure the citizens of Ontario receive the treatment they deserve? And we're going to start more or less in the middle here, so I'm going to start with Doug.
Well, thank you for the question. You meet a lot of interesting people when you canvass, and I will tell you that I had a very interesting conversation with a registered nurse. And I will pull it lightly to you when I say that she ripped the strip off me. She said to me, you have no idea what healthcare is like these days. It's in crisis. It is terrible. She said, I'm 27 years on the job. There's no way that I'm going to retire. But some of these nurses who have been there for 2 or 3 years and paid $120,000 to pay to go to school, they're wringing their hands. They're moving away from the profession. We need to treat our health professionals better. We need to repeal Bill 124 and start to pay our nurses properly, and our doctors and our allied health professionals. A Liberal government will hire 100,000 new nurses and put $3 billion into mental health. Thank you.
Sam.
Thank you. This is a concern, and it's one of the reasons I think it's so important that we look at 3 new hospitals coming to the Niagara region. We have a new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital where shovels were in the ground just a couple of weeks ago. We have a new Niagara South Hospital coming and a new Hotel Dieu Shaver Hospital as well. 3 new hospitals, and we're hiring 27,000 PSWs as well as 5,000 nurses to address the concerns there. But I think we have to also look beyond just those institutions and also look at things like home care. Home care is an area that our government has committed substantial resources to expanding and ensuring that people have access to that care. Another area that I strongly believe in, and one I've worked on, is palliative care. I brought forward the Compassionate Care Act to expand palliative care in the province of Ontario. When we came to office in 2018, there were 360 palliative care beds in the province. Today, there are over 600. So these are just a few of the ways that we're working on investing in our crucial healthcare infrastructure, supporting more nurses into the profession, and ensuring that we're getting the job done in healthcare.
Thank you. Jim?
So what we would do is we would reevaluate everything that's taken place in the hospitals. We actually have candidates that are nurses, and they've indicated that, and of course they did not stay in the hospital because they were forced out because they didn't take the jab. But at the same time, elective surgeries were being postponed or canceled, and there was only a certain number that they would allow to actually happen, and that's one of the reasons why we've got this issue right now. So we focused everything on COVID, all right, and what we did was we locked down the healthy, and we made the vulnerable exposed to this condition, and that's the seniors. Many seniors were exposed to this. Our proposal is to reevaluate the CPSO, take a look at its structure, eliminate big pharma from lobbying into the hospital system. So we need to radically reevaluate and change what's going on in our hospitals because big pharma is telling the hospitals what to do, and that has to stop.
Thank you. Dan?
This is very dear to me. My wife is a physician, so I'm used to seeing her in the hospital for hours on end. And I'm going to say burnout is a huge problem. These nurses and staff are burnout, and the chance for misdiagnosis and serious health issues arises greatly when you got burnout situations. Number one, let's get the nurses that were fired back to work. I don't know why you would fire a nurse in the middle of a pandemic. It doesn't make sense to me. So we're going to get that. We'll reinstate the nurses that were fired, the health practitioners that were fired. And we're also going to go after the people that fired them. We don't think that was ever fair that they did that in the first place.
That's right.
The Ontario government has a very strong health platform, streamlining some of the red tape that's involved in getting nurses and health practitioners and people that are held in the healthcare facility into their system. There is a lot of bureaucratic red tape, and I know that firsthand because my wife has dealt with some of it. So we have a very strong platform, but yes, thank you so much.
Dave?
Thanks for the question. Healthcare is top of mind of so many folks, and when we look at the current PC government, they said that nurses, healthcare providers, healthcare workers were heroes, but they treated them like zeros. Through wage suppression, benefit suppression legislation called Bill 124, where they couldn't freely negotiate a wage, they were turned away from the profession and also not given the items that they needed in order to help us. So the NDP would certainly repeal Bill 124 immediately and freely negotiate with our healthcare workers and treat them like the heroes they are. The second thing is, most folks that I talk to want to stay in their home longer. And so we will invest in home care so that folks can live in their home longer, pay those healthcare workers an appropriate wage, and so that they don't have to go into a long-term care. We'll also remove and stop private long-term care and invest only in public long-term care. Thanks very much.
Chris?
Thank you, and I'll try not to repeat what my colleagues have shared, but there's no question that the healthcare system in Ontario has been in peril for years before COVID. COVID has simply highlighted some of our shortcomings. We need, frankly, a whole new reassessment and redeployment of resources. The baby boom has gone through the schools, and we're now at the age where we look at health care, in particular long-term care and elder care. These have been neglected seriously over the years. We need to put resources in place that adequately staff hospitals. We need to reinstate nurses that have lost their jobs. We need to provide financial restitution to them, and we need to invest in services and supports so that people could actually care for their aging parents and relatives out of their home and not burden institutions or rely on privatized elder care any longer. Thanks.
Thank you, candidates, for working through that section. We are now moving to the candidate questions section. So here we will have each candidate will be provided the opportunity to ask one other candidate one question. Candidates will have 30 seconds to pose the question. Please identify which candidate you are directing your question towards. This will not be included in your 30 seconds. Please ensure that you ask your question within the 30 seconds, or I will have to step in and let your identified candidate respond. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 1 minute to respond. And of course, answers are going to be timed, and the 15-second rule applies, and I will interrupt if we have to. Okay. So we will start with Chris. Please pose your question, and to who?
Thank you, and my question is for Mr. Usterhoff. The NDP Bill 17, Gender Affirming Healthcare Act, sits with the Standing Committee on Social Justice following 2 readings and supported by the Conservative Party. Bill requires that any gender affirming healthcare committee include members of transgender, two-spirit, non-binary, gender diverse community. The NDP's gone on record saying they expect to pass this piece of legislation following the election. How does the Conservative Party, and in particularly Sam, yourself, reconcile this? Have you been stringing the NDP along to committee, or do you intend to support it?
Yeah, my thanks to Mr. Arneux. I would have to go back and look at the piece of legislation. I'm frankly not sure what the legislation is on. What was the bill number? Did you say 17, if that's correct? I'll have to go follow back up on that to give you an answer on that. But obviously, private members' legislation, which it would have been if it came from the NDP, is considered by all members and voted on individually based off of the individual members. So I would have to read the bill before I could say how we would vote on a potential piece of legislation down the road.
Thank you. Jim, I'm going to move to you.
Okay, sorry, Sam, you're going to be on the hot seat, obviously.
It's all right. I have 6 older brothers.
Yeah. So my question to you, Sam, is will you actually step outside of the caucus and not be whipped? And will you actually fight any potential for any lockdown in the future?
Thank you. So I think this is a really important topic. Part of our plan is a plan to stay open. We know that Ontarians over the past couple of years have gone through an incredibly difficult time, and we know that lockdown measures and restrictions were very, very challenging. Did we get everything perfect? No. No, we made mistakes, and I think it's fair to say that we made many of them, unfortunately. But we've also learned from that, and that's why part of our commitment as a government is a plan to stay open and make sure that Ontario is able to continue to move forward. But frankly, we have to look at what the other parties also brought forward. We saw the NDP and Liberals want to shut down manufacturing, destroy our supply chains if that had happened. We saw them say we shut down way too late and then say that we reopened way too early. They said they wanted to keep measures in place far longer than anybody, frankly, across North America had them in place. But we listened to the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health and Dr. Moore and said, we need to move forward. We need to recognize that it's time to reopen. It's time to get the job done. And it's part of our platform to keep Ontario open for good.
Thank you, Sam. Dave Augustine.
Thanks very much. My question is also for Mr. Usterhoff. Mr. Usterhoff, the environmental assessment for the new GO station at Casablanca Boulevard was complete in 2011, It was promised to be open in 2021. Thousands of people moved into the area, and thousands others residents are counting on that station. Why did your PC government fail to get the new GO station built as promised?
Well, I have to correct the record on that, Mr. Augustine. GO service to Niagara under the former Liberal government's plan was slated to begin each day by 2023. Well, it came 4 years ahead of schedule. In 2019, since 2019, there has been GO service going in and out of Niagara each and every day. Incredible improvement in transit. With regards to the physical station in Grimsby, I know there's active negotiations underway between Metrolinx and the town of Grimsby as well as the region to make sure that is built, but I can assure the people of Niagara West that we are 100% committed to getting the GO train built. And let's look at what the other parties have done when it comes to assessments and reviews and consultations and yada yada. It keeps going on and on and on. They talk a good game, but they don't want anything built. Doug Ford and the PC say, let's cut the red tape and get things done. That's what we're going to keep doing, whether it's for the GO train or other crucial infrastructure in our region.
Sam, I'll let you catch your breath and hand the floor over to you.
Excellent. My question is for Mr. Joyner. Mr. Joyner, over the 15 years that the Liberals were in office, they built 611 long-term care beds across this entire province. Since we came to office, we built almost 27,000. There's in fact 2,900 being built across the Hamilton and GTHA area, the Hamilton and Niagara area. If your party could only build 611 beds across the entire province, fewer beds than are being built in Niagara alone, why should they trust you or your government with the long-term care file?
Well, actually, if you listen to Mr. Del Duca, our leader of the Liberal Party of Ontario, we are going to revolutionize long-term care facilities. We are actually going to build facilities that are not like institutions. Unfortunately, the PC government wants to think that our seniors want to just go and live in institutions that look like warehouses. We're going to revolutionize the long-term care facilities by building pods, and we're going to make them very community-minded, because our seniors shouldn't be just thrown into old age homes and long-term cares and make them feel like they're in cages. We're going to revolutionize long-term care, and we're going to build these facilities where they're most needed, and we'll make sure that they're staffed with proper PSWs, or the right amount of PSWs. And unfortunately, the Conservative government said they were going to put an iron ring around long-term care facilities. Well, they actually failed. They failed our seniors, and many people passed away during COVID because of the Conservatives not able to control the pandemic. Thank you.
Dan, I'm going to move it over to you. Dan Deal.
And my question is also for Mr. Usterhoff. Mr. Usterhoff, as we continue to see Doug Ford move left of center and more and more less socially conservative values, will you assure us, the social conservatives, that you will vote for us, or will you continue to follow Doug Ford's whipping of the votes and vote for Doug Ford's agenda, not ours?
Well, I can't agree with that depiction. If you look at what we brought in place, we've expanded palliative care in the province of Ontario. We followed up on our commitment to repeal and replace the Kathleen Wayne curriculum with the largest consultation in Ontario's history, over 74,000 parents involved in ensuring that we have a curriculum that respects the needs of parents and children and ensures that it's age appropriate. We brought in place human trafficking legislation, historic human trafficking legislation, to deal with the challenge that we face when it comes to human trafficking. We brought forward measures to protect free speech on university campuses and ensure that we're protecting also those the importance of free speech in our society. But what I can say is that as a government, since coming to office, we have ensured each and every day that we brought forward policies that work for the people. As we move forward, yes, we recognize there were mistakes made throughout COVID-19, and we need to learn from those and do better going forward. The Premier would admit the same thing, and I know he said that. We need to do what's necessary to build up Ontario. We have a 5-point plan to keep costs down for families, rebuild our economy, stay open, and ensure that we're building the crucial infrastructure. That's something we're going to keep getting done.
And the final question in this section goes to Doug Joyner.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Usterhoff as well.
Are there any more, or this is all of them?
I think the Green Party said.
Oh, the Greens sent their regrets.
As you know, Mr. Usterhoff, planning issues all across Niagara West have come up in every municipality. West Lincoln, Grimsby, Lincoln, and Pelham. Planning issues like official plans, provincial policy statements, and regional official plans. What else has come up in planning is also something called an MZO, a ministerial zoning order. Have let the Ford Conservatives rezone land without any public or environmental consultation, a power which they've exploded over 60 times, more than triple the number than the 15 years prior to your time in office.
Doug, I'm going to ask you to get to the question.
My question is, will your government use an MZO to build Highway 413?
Well, you know, this is the type of question that the NDP and Liberals ask when they want to consult and they want to go out and they want to hold more reviews and strike more committees and waste more time and listen to more people. Listen, for 15 years your government was in office, and respectfully, you didn't build enough houses, you didn't build highways, you didn't build hospitals, and we're suffering the result of that now. We don't have gridlock out of nowhere. It came about as a result of investments in these areas. We don't have high housing prices out of nowhere. This came about as a failure to increase housing starts. We've doubled housing starts since we came to office. We're going to keep making sure that we're using tools like MZOs, like working with local municipalities in their planning to make sure that we're making life more affordable for Ontarians. Now, part of that, of course, includes fighting the carbon tax, a carbon tax that both the NDP and the Liberals want to raise to almost 40 cents a litre under their plans. You think it's expensive to gas up right now. You drove past, I think it was 204 or such on the way in.
What's that have to do with MZOs, Mr.
Because
Usterhoff?
it's tied in with the exact same attitude of always ensuring that you aren't doing what's necessary to keep costs down for families. We're going to do what it takes to get costs down for families, get things built, and get things done for the province of Ontario.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you, gentlemen, for that section. I think it was very interesting for all in attendance. We're going to move to the public submitted questions. So these questions of the debate have been submitted online or here at the debate this evening. If your question does not get asked, you will have the opportunity to speak to the candidates at the end of the evening. We will try to get everyone's questions to the candidates. However, we only have so much time available. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond. Answers will be timed, and the 15-second rule is in force. So we'll move to the questions. The first question is from the Chamber's website and Mike. What are your goals to tackle climate change, protect wetlands, and save our farmlands? And we'll start with Dan.
So I want to address this carefully. After 2 years of COVID crisis and fear-mongering, we do have to be careful that we aren't doing the same mistake as just jumping on the climate change crisis with unprepared situation. I have been in the industry a long time, and I realized very carefully that our grid really isn't set up for electric vehicles. There's a lot of things that need to happen. The Ontario Party is really committed to clean water, clean air, and clean soil. My daughter and I got into scuba diving. Our lakes and rivers are full of trash. The Ontario government wants to eliminate raw sewage that goes into our waterways and lakes. And so, yeah, that's our position.
Thank you, Dan. Dave, over to you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's sad, isn't it, that the current government wants to pave over wetlands, the Holland Marsh, and they have this 413 that helps this buddy, that buddy, this buddy, that buddy. It's wrong. They're helping their buddies and not helping the planet and the environment. Obviously, we'll stop the 413. We won't build the Mid-Penn corridor. We will stop farmlands being paved over, as is being proposed around Smithville. 1,000 acres, 10 farms equivalent, are being proposed to be bulldozed for new development around Smithville. We will retrofit buildings, up to 5% of buildings a year. We'll actually remove the carbon tax and replace it with what was there, actually a better program than what was there before, of cap and trade, which doesn't go against consumers like you and I when we go to the pump. It actually goes to the producers of the carbon in industry, and they have to lower their emissions instead of you paying it at the pumps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Chris.
Thank you. And without question, the entire Niagara region, escarpment green belt, is a vital ecosystem and absolutely critical to our economy, which relies a lot on farming and agriculture. We need to put controls in place to protect our farms. We need to put controls in place to support our agricultural industry from feeling the pressure of increased fuel prices and operating costs and wanting to get out of the business and being approached with perhaps lucrative deals for their property. We need to make it attractive for them to stay in business, and that requires us to control and protect these lands. Thanks.
We'll move to Doug.
Thank you for the question. And Ontario used to be a global leader in climate action. Then the Ford Conservatives happened, and quite simply, Ontario went backwards. An elected Ontario Liberal government will reestablish Ontario's leadership on the environment, will cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. We will slash all public transit fares across the province to $1 until January 2024. And by doing that, we'll take 400,000 cars off the road, reducing pollution and congestion. In addition, we will expand the Greenbelt, and we will create 5 new provincial parks. Our track record is clear. Conservatives increase carbon pollution, and Liberals cut it. Doug Ford's decision to make pollution-free by scrapping cap and trade cost the province $3 billion and has not been replaced with any other real plan to meet our emissions reduction targets. Thank you.
Sam.
My beautiful wife, Carrie, is in the audience today, a long-suffering wife, a fantastic opportunity that we've had to go and hike the trails around Niagara has been one of our favorite activities, to go up and down the escarpment, to walk around Kinsman and to see the different, just amazing gifts that we've been given in nature around here. It's amazing. Since we've had Sullivan, our son, we take him out for walks as well, and he is fascinated by every aspect of the outdoors. And I know it's important to make sure that we protect that. I'm born and raised on a farm in the area. Conservation is something that's second nature to farmers, and it's an important aspect of ensuring that we're not losing our wonderful land. But I will say, what's important as well is making sure that we're doing so in a way that works with our businesses, that works with the agricultural community, that works with municipalities. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like. Yes, it means cleaning up our rivers. Yes, it means cleaning up our waterways. Yes, it means cleaning our land. But it also means an investment working with a place like Dofasco, where they removed their old furnaces and are bringing in electric arc furnaces, which is the equivalent of taking 1 million cars off the road, a way of ensuring that we're reducing emissions and helping the economy at the same time.
Thank you, Sam. Jim.
So we would advocate for farmland as being designated as national security issue and also in critical infrastructure. I think it's very important to understand that the food supply in our country is tenuous at best. We're importing a ton of food. We should be growing it here. We should be focusing on helping farmers to be able to grow here, small farms, support the small farms, support community farming, and also support new developments that actually have a farming component in them. So when people are talking about climate change, as far as I'm concerned, we're paying a carbon tax for India and for China to pollute the world. We need to really think back on what's going on here. Niagara used to be the most green place in the world. We used to have glass bottles. As a kid, I used to take the glass bottles back to the store to exchange it for licorice. Now we got plastic everywhere, cans everywhere. Nobody's doing anything. We used to have an ethic. That ethic has been lost. It comes to good stewardship.
Okay, we're starting to run up against the clock a little bit, but I'm gonna pose one more question from the public. So this comes from John. With the possibility of a recession in the very near future, how would your party, if they form government, prepare for this, fiscally speaking? And I'm going to start with Dave.
Thanks very much. I haven't heard that there might be a recession, and one always wonders where you get that kind of information and those projections. And I think the NDP is committed to average everyday people. So as we work ourselves through the economy and look at the economy, we've actually seen what? We've seen that those that are the most, that are earning the most, the billionaires, have made the most money during this pandemic, right? Are they going to lead us through a recession now so that they can make more money or hold on to that money? What we've seen, for example, Loblaws, Mr. Weston just posted a 40% increase year-over-year profit for groceries, while we're all paying much more. Gas prices are through the roof. So one of the things, as an example, that the NDP will do is we will regulate gas prices so that we won't have those sharp increases that hit our pocketbooks as we face the economy. Thank you.
Sam?
Well, I can tell you that the Liberal NDP coalition that worked together for 15 years in this province left the economy in shambles. And with that last thing we need to go back to is the socialist policies of the NDP and the Liberal governments. Their tax and spend, reckless spending, driving up deficits that were, frankly, when we came to office, beyond comprehension, had left little fiscal room for Ontario. But what we're seeing, what part of our plan, working with our municipalities, working with job creators to cut taxes, to make sure that we're rebuilding our economy. And I'll use one example of this. 300,000 manufacturing jobs left this province when the Liberals were in power. Since we've come to office, over 55,000 manufacturing jobs have come back to Ontario. We're seeing record investments from Honda, from GM, from Chrysler, Stellantis across this province. And we're going to continue working with business to get the investments that are needed to create jobs, to ensure that we're also addressing the cost of living by cutting the gas tax, fighting the carbon tax, and keeping license plate stickers off your vehicles.
Thanks, Sam. Chris, over to you.
We have to start living within our means. Right now, Ontario has ramped up its debt to just north of $400 billion. The annual interest payment on that debt is $14 billion, the highest or the fourth highest line item on the budget. With a debt that's out of control like that, we need to start living within our means. We need to start strategically planning to train young people for jobs that are actually available, and we need to deal with the housing crisis that we talked about earlier tonight and get that under control and provide effective transportation so that our labor force are able to get in and around the Niagara region affordably. Good.
Thank you. Jim, over to you. Your turn. You're up.
What was the question again? I thought I already answered that question.
This is on fiscal.
On a recession.
You get the question back.
Potential recession.
Oh, the potential recession, right.
Potential
right.
recession
Okay.
and
All right.
fiscal responsibility.
Sorry about that. So with respect to the potential recession, we have a carbon tax that is now costing us $2.10 a liter in fuel, all right? So when the NDP and the Liberals talk about, trying to regulate this or that, what we're doing is we're regulating ourselves out of existence at the end of the day. So the first thing that I would do is completely strike the carbon tax. It's pointless, it's useless, it doesn't do anything, but make the middle class and the poor destitute. That's what it's doing. It's destroying our economy. It's destroying our transportation. It's destroying our farm inputs. This carbon tax right now is one of the biggest destroyers of our farms, of our food supply, of our livelihoods, of our enjoyment of our properties and our lands. We need to start being realistic about what we're doing and not having these fictitious charges to the average person and everybody else around the world is doing absolutely nothing, and we're doing everything. And we're the greenest. Niagara is one of the greenest communities, one of the greenest regions in the world.
Thank you, Jim. Doug Joyner.
Thank you for the question. The Ontario Liberal government has a plan for economic dignity that will replace the minimum wage with a regional living wage starting at $16. We will provide all Ontario workers with portable drug, dental, and mental health services. We will work with businesses to build towards a 4-day week, which could boost quality of life, work-life balance, and provide much-needed relief without loss of productivity. We will provide all workers with 10 paid job-protected sick days as we navigate our way out of this pandemic. And lastly, we will restore common sense commitments to workers that Doug Ford canceled, like equal pay for equal work, and we will match up to $1,000 in annual retirement savings for low-income earners. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Dan Dale.
It is true that we are heading into a recession. I just read the Toronto Star, 34% increase in business failures. This was just recently posted. The Dow fell by 1,100 today. I just saw that on the news this afternoon. I also saw a commentator from Goldman Sachs saying we are now probably 30% chance of recession. And quite frankly, it's liberal policies that got us here. You cannot print money and then spend and not have inflation. Inflation is killing the worker. Inflation is killing us. People are spending money on the core things they need, gas and food right now. That's not money that's going into the economy. So when you're when you're just committing all of the disposable income to food and gas, it's going to hurt the economy. We need to reverse all of these liberal policies. That's why we're so disappointed with Doug Ford. He has just drifted too far into liberal policy territory.
So that wraps up the public questions. We're now moving to closing remarks, and each of the candidates will have 1 minute to give his closing remarks. So we are going to start with Jim Torma, Populist Party of Ontario.
So we've seen an incredible destruction of our communities. We've seen schooling that is absolutely not even schooling anymore. Our party is going to advocate for really working hard to bring the skilled trades to high school. We really need to get back to where we were at one point, where we had children coming out of high school and now they're young adults, but they have a ticket. So they're a skilled trade. We're not talking about the colleges and the universities. That's another question altogether. We need to be able to provide this type of skill, this type of trade early in a student's life. And that's what's going to create a workforce that's going to be ready. Right now, we don't have anybody ready coming out of high school. So one of the things that we're going to be focusing on is on that. And social enterprise. Populist Party Ontario, after the election, watch what we're going to do. We're going to take the money that's donated to our party. We're going to institute social enterprises. And the first one is to reduce the cost of heating for seniors. And we're going to do it through an HVAC system, and it doesn't have to have a building permit. Watch us.
Sam Usterhoff, Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario.
The Ontario PCs and Doug Ford are the only serious party with a plan to rebuild our economy, a plan to keep Ontario open, a plan to put more money back in your pockets, a plan to build key infrastructure, and a plan to work for workers. As your MPP over the past 5 years, I have focused on the priorities of this area and made sure that we're able to deliver results. Whether that's getting a new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, whether that's expanding access to palliative care, whether that's seeing manufacturing jobs improve across this province and right here in our region, I'm committed to working with each and every one of you to get the job done. On June 2nd, please vote for me to send me back to Queen's Park to fight for you and your family. God bless you all.
Doug Joyner, Liberal Party of Ontario.
Thank you, Paul, for moderating tonight, and thank you, Chamber of Commerce. You know, folks, the magic of Ontario is that progress has always been possible. However, with the Doug Ford PC government for the last 4 years, that's not always been true. It used to be if you worked hard and you played by the rules, Ontario would have your back. But supports haven't kept up with the times. But let me be very clear. The Ford Conservatives spent the last 4 years making all the wrong choices. In my house, we refer to Doug Ford as Doug Fold. We can choose soaring profits for mega grocers or big box stores, or we can make them pay for their fair share to help lower the cost of food for families. We can continue the sell-off of our public health care system while seniors suffer neglect in long-term care homes, or we can heal the frontline workers and help our seniors age with dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, Ontario can be a place to grow, but only if we make the right choices. On June 2nd, elect Doug Joyner as your next Liberal MPP so that I can take your rural and your urban voice to Queen's Park. Thank you.
Dan Dale, Ontario Party.
The platform for the Ontario Party is faith, family, and freedom. Over the course of the last 3 weeks, I have been out canvassing and I meet hundreds of like-minded people. Then you know what? The people of Niagara West are good people. They're hardworking grandparents, they're hardworking fathers and mothers. And you know what? There's been a lot of bad news tonight. There's a lot of things that we are unhappy with, but you know, it's the people that make us great. The people of this community are terrific. And you know what? I'm sick of the division. There is so much division and anger and strife. You know what? I would just suggest to everybody, turn the news off. They're fear-mongering you. They're making you scared. Connect with family that you haven't talked to for a while. Connect with people in your community. Connect with people in your church that you maybe had a problem with. This is how we fix the Ontario that is not right now.
Dave Augustine, New Democratic Party of Ontario.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to roll up my sleeves and start working for you and your family. Together, we can revive our public health care system and get our local facilities properly staffed. We can provide mental health care, drug and dental care with your OHIP card, not with your credit card. We can finally build the Casablanca GO station and make sure that the train stops in Grimsby. We can get the profit out of long-term care and back in for seniors and give our elders the quality home care and the long-term care that you know they deserve. We can make life more affordable for you, from gasoline to hydro rates to auto insurance to the cost of housing. At the start, I said this election is about you. As your MPP, I will listen to you, I will work for you, I will fight for you, and I will represent you and your family. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Thanks to the Chamber of Commerce and our moderators, and congratulations to all the candidates. Thank you.
Chris Arneux, New Blue, Ontario.
Thanks, and thanks to everybody for coming and patiently listening tonight. Ontario needs a strong right-of-center leadership so that we, as the most populated and most economically prosperous province, can take that leadership role and push back against the radical left ideology coming out of Ottawa. New Blue has a full slate of candidates. We have the numbers to form a government and be the change we need. We're proud to support real conservative and Christian values and not play politics with them by pretending to go along with any of the radical left ideology. We'll stand for what we believe. As an accountant, I've listened tonight to a lot of promises being made, and it still defies logic for me that nobody ever explains where that money's coming from. You all know it's coming from you. That's where all these promises get paid for. We'll remove the left-wing, progressive, liberal ideology from public education and hold public education accountable by providing a tax credit to parents who opt for alternative education with no strings attached. We'll end ineffective and divisive mandates and lockdowns forever, ensuring that the Ontario economy is always running and that everybody has access to a labor force at all times. We'll reinstate everyone who's been adversely affected.
If you could wrap up, please.
And end the carbon tax and reduce the HST. Thank you very much. Vote for us.
Amen.
So that wraps up the formal part of our evening. In closing, I certainly would like to thank the candidates for their participation. And for stepping up to run to represent the residents of West Niagara. Good on you for doing that. And I'd also like to personally thank you for having a very respectful debate. Good for you guys. You know. So election day, we all know, is June 2nd. Polls will open at 9 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. I don't think I have to tell this crowd, please take the time to vote. Reminder that you are invited to remain and speak to the candidates. However, we are requesting everyone to exit the building by 9 p.m. So I'd also like to thank Don Rose and the Great Lakes Christian High School for hosting tonight's event. Great venue. And finally, on behalf of the Lincoln, Grimsby, and West Lincoln Chambers of Commerce, thank you all for joining us here this evening. Good night.